Real quick before I begin, one, I'm sorry this took so long to get out. I got sick and I didn't want to script everything while I was feeling bad. And second, I wanted to kind of do this a bit better. I think the first video was a bit too specific with the info and didn't have as good a summary. So this time I want to be more about the overall concepts without getting into very specific data as much and just kind of get more of a general idea out there. So with that being said, I'm pretty sure we're going to get one weapon in each of the 10 new Splatoon 3 classes. I covered the first 5 in part 1, and today we're going to be covering the next 5, including the Charger, Bow, Roller, Blaster, and Slosher. And these are some of my favorite ideas, so I hope you guys enjoy. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and let's do this. So first off is a weapon I felt should have been in this game a long time ago, which is the Super Scope. We have the End Zap in Splatoon, and I feel like this is an easy next step and a great way to add a new Charger. I'm going to be pulling a lot of inspiration from Smash, such as the sounds it makes, the fact that its projectiles are more of an actual ball rather than just a line, and of course the overall model. So first of all, the base stats and tap shot. I took a bit of inspiration from Goodtuber because one thing I really like about the weapon is its tap shots actually have more range than normal, so I wanted to take this concept a bit farther. This weapon can strafe decently fast, has a bit of a faster fire rate, and has Splattershot Pro range on its tap shots. It would have a bigger hitbox similar to Bamboo and be a middleweight weapon. So these tap shots would look and sound exactly like the Smash Brothers ones, which makes them a little bit more powerful, but they're still a really unreliable kill option since it's a 4-hit kill. I think it would be okay at mid-range pressure and trying to keep people off you better than the standard tap shots, but it wouldn't really do too much. The charge would take slightly longer and be slightly farther than Squiffer, being about the range of Hydra and 50 frames, but of course this wouldn't be as good as the normal Spot Charger. Since this is based off the Smash Brothers version, rather than having a normal laser and a trail, it'll be a shot that does 80 damage and almost immediately after would explode, dealing 40 damage, in a radius slightly smaller than normal blasters. So while it would still effectively be a one-shot against other players, if you were to actually try to damage objects, it would be significantly weaker, as even Squiffer does 140 and other chargers do 160 and 180. The weapon would be fairly ink efficient and have about the same pain as Squiffer. Also, since it is, well, a super scope, this weapon has a scope and no unscope variant whatsoever. I kind of wanted to have a more middle range charger, even though Squiffer kind of is that in the middle of Splat Charger and Squiffer, but I also wanted to make it a bit different, kind of more of a hybrid thing, since none of the chargers really share properties with other classes, and I think a super scope is a good way to do that while also tying into an actual real-life Nintendo product that works well as a Splatoon weapon. And since this design is of course pretty iconic, I decided to keep it a fairly simple weapon. So next up is Sloshers. I think this weapon class has 2 big missed opportunities. 1, a supportive Slosher weapon that's not super long range, and 2, the piercing mechanic from the Salmon Run Grizzco Slosher. And so, with this weapon, I wanted to combine those 2 concepts into a unique support that can play off of painting around different angles and piercing different objects. So the base Slosh should have slightly better paint than normal Slosher, a slightly better fire rate, and much weaker damage, being a 3-shot. It would be a middleweight weapon with no fall-off damage that can move slightly faster. The reason I didn't want any fall-off damage is I wanted this to very reliably be able to combo with people over objects. Even by support standards, this weapon would be pretty weak at killing on its own, so I want it to be really good at comboing with people in situations other supports can't. The piercing just has to end up being a second slosh for it to be fair, and originally I thought of it being a jumping thing, kind of like rollers, but buckets like to jump a lot just to move around, so I felt that was too limiting. So instead, simply holding down the button will do a little charge animation, and after 20 frames, it will launch this pierce shot. This would be double the ink efficiency, have the same range of 96, do 60 damage, travel fairly slowly, and would have the perk of being able to pierce through grates, the Rainmaker shield, splash wall, and Brellas shields, but it would lose 20 damage for each time it pierced an object. Obviously, I do not want this to be too strong a counter to objects to where whenever you see a Brella, you would instantly pick this weapon, so I tried to make it good against them, but not game-breaking, and I also did not have it work against special shields like the Big Bubbler because that just felt too strong. Out of all the weapon concepts I do, there are some that seem really difficult to balance and manage exact data, and this is the hardest one because we do not have anything that pierces like that, and we do not have a short-range Slosher that is a support. These are 2 cool ideas we have no experience with and probably require a lot of internal testing to figure out how exactly they work. That being said, this is just a concept, and I think it's a cool idea that could work given enough time. So let's make a new bow, or stringer as the game likes to call it. Personally, I love the aesthetic of an elite bow or a long bow. This is something made for long distance, so specialized that it even outranges the E-liter. So this weapon would be much slower than the base splat bow and be a heavyweight weapon. Obviously, we're going to hurt its mobility a bit. Now, bow has 2 rings of charging, but we're we're not exactly sure what the purpose of this is. So the first ring is going to take 75 frames to charge, and the second ring will take 20 frames, being 95 frames total, or 3 more than E-liter. It'll have a charge hold, but the gimmick of this one will be that it must recharge the second ring if it uses it, meaning its mobility is much more limited. I'm not sure if firing on a single charge should do something that different. It's kind of hard to say because we don't know exactly what the first and second charge does on a bow, we just know it exists. The full charge will have the same range as an unscoped normal E-liter with no main power-up and do 160 damage, being slightly weaker. It would also have no tri-shot. However, this weapon would travel even further an extra 2 lines, but beyond this point it would only do 80 damage, making it not a one-shot. The explosion could be slightly bigger, but also take slightly longer to explode than the normal tri-stringer, which here would do 30 damage, allowing it to combo with the shot if you don't move out of the way. This would force displacement at farther away than E-liter range, but wouldn't really kill you unless if you moved incredibly slowly. Finally, since there's no tri-shot, in order for it to have a bit more of an impact if you jump or not, the explosion would be kind of like a sideways one in a disc, and if you jumped it would be more vertical, and if you shot sideways it would be more horizontal. Ultimately, I think bow is a weapon that does a lot of different things. That's kind of what makes it special, and there's a lot you can do with the concept, but since we don't fully know how they work, it's a bit difficult to do too much in detail. So this is my idea for a heavier type of bow. Alright, so next up is a roller concept, and originally this was just going to be the opposite of Flingza with the dynamo horizontal and a carbon vertical, but I had one more ambitious idea. There's a character in Overwatch called Reinhardt with a barrier that they control and with powerful hammer strikes, and I really like that character and want to see something similar in Splatoon, and so I made a roller with a barrier. It's Reinhardt but a roller, so stay with me. So unlike literally every other roller, rolling would not actually deal damage. You would use 5% of your ink tank per second, and it would be equal to that of Splat Roller, but not speed up, and it would paint 10% farther to the side because the roller would be a bit bigger than a standard roller, or wider, I guess. When rolling, you produce a barrier, which is basically like a glass screen that goes upward, extending to your Inkling's head level. This would be fully transparent. Rather than the shield having HP, taking damage would directly drain your ink tank. This would have the same multipliers as Brella, and every 100 damage is 10% of the ink tank. That number might need to be adjusted, but I'm just going with that for the concept. The shield would show as cracked as you start taking damage, and it would also slow down your rolling speed. I don't have super specific numbers for this, but basically take it as the more damage you take, the slower you move forward, and the more of your ink gets drained. To encourage a cooldown between shielding, you would have half a second of waiting frames before you're covering your ink, and this would be a middleweight weapon. Okay, so to summarize, rather than a damaging attack, rolling allows you to produce a barrier. While you can't really do anything other than paint, you can use it to protect yourself and teammates since it's a bit wider, and as you take damage, you would slow down and lose your ink tank, forcing you to wait before recovering your ink tank, putting a large cooldown on you. You're basically forced to choose between shielding or attacking. You can't do both at the same time, which is also true of Reinhardt in Overwatch. So while we're at that, obviously the flicks have to be modified and mainly can't be a one-shot. There won't be any vertical flick, you just have a horizontal flick, which would look really different. You would actually swing the weapon sideways with 1.5 lines of range and decent but close range paint. You would flick repeatedly left to right. This would be 15 frames to swing, roller is 20, so it's faster, and it would do 75 damage using 5% of your ink tank. This is fairly simple. You basically flick, and then you could either flick back the other way to go for a kill, or you could drop the weapon in order to pull up your shield and protect people. So you get to interchange your shielding with these swings, which are good at defending yourself, but nowhere near as good as other rollers. So yeah, this is, again, heavily based on Reinhardt from Overwatch, and it's pretty different from the typical shields we have with Brellas, but I really like it, and I think the idea of having to choose between shielding or doing close range attacks is really cool, and is a nice way to move the game forward. And yes, I know this weapon is very ink hungry. I feel like anything with a shield kinda has to have a lot of cooldown time. I saved my favorite weapon class of blasters for last, and I know I've taken mostly a backseat this episode on the multiple firing modes compared to last time, but this is the one case where I feel it has to happen, and compared to every other concept, this is the one weapon that I feel really should have multiple firing modes. This is a shift blaster, and every single blaster can't change its range, but this one can. In the original concepts, I debated having this thing be a charge shot, but I think it still has to have a set travel distance, just 2 of them instead of 1. Being able to change where the radius explodes is A, way too broken, and B, takes away the spacing requirement of the class. So the standard fire shoots 2 frames faster than the rapid blaster and has a blast radius of 30, smaller than all of the rest of them, 33 being rapid size and 40 being clash. Indirect damage would be 40, direct 70, and the range would be the same as normal blaster. This would be good at mid-range poking and overall pretty solid. It's basically in the middle of rapid and clash, the main downside being that the radius is much smaller, so its ability to poke people around corners compared to other blasters is much more limited. The alternate fire would be done by jumping and have the same range as Rapid Pro. This would be a one-shot blaster shot. When jumping, you get access to a more powerful but incredibly slow shot, taking an entire 10 frames to come out, while most blasters is 6 and range is 7. This would also have 5 frames more end lag than range blaster, and while the rapid fire mode would be fairly linear on your ink tank, you would only get 7 of these shots before having to recover your ink. The direct hit would do 125 damage, however the indirect with the radius of 35 would do anywhere from 35 to 45 damage, making it a 3-hit kill. While this can apply some distance pressure, it is basically only made to go for skill shot directs at a long distance, with jumping a long time to start and a lot of end lag with a ton of ink efficiency. It is a very high risk shot. This would be a middleweight weapon, and as a bonus detail, the blaster would actually shift in how it looks between its jumping mode and its standard fire. I think both of these modes is not only an interesting hybrid between the blasters and gives that different range swapping that no one else can do, but it comes with its fair share of both risks and rewards. The rapid fire having a smaller radius and weaker damage, and the range mode being incredibly slow and only having major power with directs. But with that in the first video done, that is 10 brand new concepts for the 10 weapon classes of Splatoon 3. Regardless of how many ideas we actually get, I'm so excited to see some brand new weapons and try them out, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that as well. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.